Oh boy, this is going to be an addictive one for many of us. This really does fit into my tastes. Today we're going to take a look at Valthirian Arc Hero Story 2 on the Switch, which I think many of you are going to enjoy. The publisher have sponsored this one, which means we can give a copy away, but it also means it won't be scored. Still, I think you guys know us well enough to be able to tell exactly what we think of this one.
Yep, we played the first game of this when it released back on the Switch and really enjoyed it, so we're quite interested to see what this sequel does, and we'll tell you everything you need to know.
If you'd like to win a copy of this one, then let us know down in the comments what you make of it. We'll be announcing that in the next few days in a community post. Okay, what's it all about? Well, let's find out. The narrative centers around 4 different schools that are defending the world from various dragons and creatures. You take on the role of a new principal and have to design and create your own avatar as well as academy. You can change the name as well as its little badge, and then you begin your adventure.
So as the story goes on, you'll have new students join your school. They obviously pay tuition fees, but that basically keeps the upkeep of the school ticking along nicely.
There are several points where you get to choose which part of the story you hear next, and it's delivered between months, so you rest between months and see small snippets of that narrative.
So in terms of the gameplay then, you have a management simulation style in terms of building your school.
Initially, you'll be placed in various buildings, things like a market, which is very important, we discovered, for making a bit of money each month, and then assigning the students that you have, again, initially starting with just one, to the different buildings that you've created.
Yeah, so each student will have a proficiency. They may be better at physical combat, magic, or be a cleric, say for example, and the buildings that you build are basically their classrooms, so you need to have one for each of your student types in order for them to flourish and meet their potential. As Mark said, it's very good to start with a market because it's a nice source of passive income. You need gold and you also need the arc stones, as having these will allow you to build new buildings, but it will also keep the school ticking along. As well as this, you can also partake in errands, or your students do at least, and again this is a nice way to get some passive income. You assign a student to an errand and there will be a percentage based on their stats as to how likely it is they'll succeed, and if they do, obviously you get that money come in.
What's important for you to manage here is the stamina. Each student has their own amount of stamina, and when this reaches 0, they won't be able to carry out any more tasks. Because of that, it's important to decide whether you want to rest them or try and send them out on those errands. But without stamina, they can't learn, they can't go out on runs, and it's another important resource to keep your eye on. There are also special items that we'll talk about in a bit that can actually replenish this, as well as food to cook, giving Valthirian Arc 2 almost a Sims element to it. Having those students partake in different classes essentially allows you to move them along a skill tree. This improves their abilities when in combat, and it also means you can then apply said skills in one of 2 slots.
Yes, they have 2 skill slots that you can use, and you will unlock new skills as you go along, and you can then use these in battle. When you are in battle, you have an AP system which will go across all of your students, and obviously anytime they use a special skill, it uses up some of those AP points.
The combat is actually surprisingly good. I really like the shield system that sees a shield placed beside each of the monsters, and that will be represented by one of your particular skills. At its simplest form, it means get the right colour for the right shield. So the warrior who focuses on physical attacks, he has a red symbol. So you line that up with the red shield. Once they're broken down, you'll then do significantly more damage. And I appreciated how fast combat was, both to get into as well as get out of.
Absolutely. So that's where your AP points will be very important. You'll need to make sure that you look as to what it is you'll need to break those shields first, use those points effectively, and then obviously any that you've got over, you can just use to guide the battle if you like, using things such as healing spells, for example.
If you need to escape, you'll run or flee to the nearest campsite. These are unlocked manually as you move your way around the maps. There are several different maps surrounding the lands around your academy, and you'll unlock further ones as you build up the relations with the different factions. It's important to note as well, by maintaining good relations, you'll actually make those areas slightly easier. How might you do that? Well, you can give them a bit of cash. It's also within these same areas that you'll be carrying out the game's main quests. There's a list of them for each one, showing the difficulty, the various rewards you'll receive, and they basically have like main story affecting quests, and then those that you can just do to try and improve, get a bit more gold, or build your students up. As Glen said, these take place in various areas around the world, and you have free control of your student. You can dash in a direction. It has that system where you approach enemies rather than random encounters, which I always like. And if you do an attack on an enemy before they see you, you get that preemptive strike, giving you 1 extra hit before the combat starts proper. Another very cool little aspect to this exploration are the various hidden chests all around. Some of them are guarded by monsters, others are just there to be discovered, and you might unlock a new student slot allowing you to gain a new student in the upcoming academic year or a new skill or ability. They're genuinely worth going after. Now back at your academy, in the lower left of the screen, you'll see a constant reminder of things that you can do. So there's never a point where you don't really know what you have to do next. You can just check down here. Now, some of those will take several months, so you'll literally be working on them. And once that's cleared, you'll have a new list of tasks to do. I think they're just there to keep the flow going.
Yeah, there's quite a lot we haven't even mentioned yet. Things such as research, where you can put points into buildings to make sure that they're available for you to build. There's also a system where you have the other factions that were mentioned earlier, and you'll start to build relationships with them, and having a stronger relationship with one will then increase your proficiency in one of the 4 areas I mentioned earlier. So each of those factions are tied to one of the, your physical, your magic, etc., etc.
There are various events that come up as well. Things like competitions, as you can see from Glen setting the world record in fishing, and they're essentially mini games, aren't they?
Yeah, they have the feel of something like an old Harvest Moon or Story of Seasons, that sort of thing, in terms of the fishing, or there's a swimming one that we saw as well, wasn't there? Button mashing to a degree, but there is an element of skill to it in terms of pacing or having to keep up with something on screen.
So you can see the 2 main currencies at the top of the screen, the gold and the arc stones. The gold is obviously earned by your market or by going out on those quests, but it's those arc stones that are also intrinsic to the game's design.
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, they come via tuition fees from your students, and having enough of both of these resources is really the crux of the game. If you have enough, you can make sure that your buildings are of a good standard and that you can continue to upgrade them. You can make sure that you are able to move your students on in terms of their skill tree, so you almost promote them to the next class, if you like. And it's a nice gameplay loop of having to ensure you have enough of these and using them correctly to get more, basically, isn't it?
Absolutely. There's something really nice about each year getting new students join your academy, and to do that you'll actually have to manually select them. They'll have different attributes as well, so they might be incredibly talented. So let's say they're physically stronger than everyone else, but they might have a personality type that is less than appealing. It feels like that moment back in the old theme hospital games when you were recruiting staff members, and the more expensive ones were the better choices, but the cheapo ones sometimes had some negative characteristics. It's very cool. Then they'll join your academy and things just get bigger and bigger. There's always more to research. The individual classes of your students can be split so they can move into further more advanced classes that do significantly more damage and allow you to tackle some of the harder boss enemies, and all the while you're researching and growing and making more and more buildings. It's just really, really addictive. Valthirian Arc 2 looks quite nice on the Nintendo Switch, and I'm quite pleased to be able to say that it runs at 30 FPS almost all the time. Load times look decent as well, but artistically it has a nice mixture of, I would say, classic JRPG styling when you're using that 3D perspective, as well as some nice hand-drawn artwork that goes along with all the characters.
Yeah, it has like a chibi look to the characters in the 3D segments, if you like, and as Mark said, you have the hand-drawn character portraits, and the school itself, you're able to kind of tilt the camera and get some nice angles of that. It has a quite classic, almost Sim City, Sim World look to it in some aspects.
You can see your students just wandering around the grounds, and you might see a few other things as well.
Yeah, there seems to be a couple of Randy Bears at one point, but I don't know what that was about. But yeah, they were enjoying themselves, so that's good. In terms of the audio, there isn't any voice acting, but the score itself is fairly pleasant. You have your more whimsical style for the main building, and then you have that more heroic score as you go into battle.
The RRP on this one is $16.99, which isn't too bad at all, and there's a 10% discount until launch, which takes it down to $15.29. You're looking at 2 gigs, so not a massive download.
There is also a physical version available if you are a physical collector.
If you're interested, there'll be links in the description and the top pinned comment, as we said before, but it's one of those that you could plumb many, many hours into. It's a very long game indeed, and if you like that style, I think there's a lot for you here.
So there you have it. There's everything you need to know about Valthirian Arc Hero School Story 2 to get you started. Don't forget, if you are looking for eShop credit to pick this one up, or any other game for that matter, you can do so via our website, SwitchUp.gg. You'll get yourself 5% cash back in our SwitchUp tokens, and at the moment, until the end of this month, you'll also get another 5% off in discount, so you're effectively getting your 10% discount, and you still get your Nintendo coins when you download the eShop card onto the eShop.
Good stuff. Thanks to our Patreons and our members, and as always, for all things Switch, all the time, keep it Switch up. Cheers, guys. See ya!